Hey, Sox fans, it's Mailbag Wednesday. How are you feeling about MLB.com predicting the White Sox to win the AL Central? And are the latest injuries to hit White Sox camp just a fluke or something to be very concerned about? On Tuesday afternoon, the Sox beat the Milwaukee Brewers behind a solid outing by Lucas Giolito. Andrew Vaughn is still sidelined, but he's getting more national attention as a potential breakout star of 2023. And as Dylan Cease, your opening day starter, it's sure lining up that way.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Sox fans, welcome to Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Sox. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search Locked On White Sox. Hey, I'm your host, Nick Morawski, a lifelong diehard Chicago White Sox fan, recording this podcast just blocks from the ballpark in beautiful Bridgeport. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTB. Locked On White Sox is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hey, welcome back to Locked On White Sox. We are getting down to the nitty gritty here with spring training games. 7 or 8 games left. There'll be a split squad game on Wednesday before the Sox take off for Houston. Opening day just around the corner. Appreciate you continuing to pass this podcast along to other White Sox fans in your life. Thanks so much for all the questions and comments. We'll get to some of those in just a moment. Our Chicago White Sox are 10-9 here in Cactus League play with a few ties. Some predictions starting to come out. You'll know this is going to be happening the rest of this week and into early next week. So Mailbag Wednesday, a couple of people reached out almost immediately after that MLB.com article. Hey, what do you think? Sox are being predicted to win the AL Central, win 90 games. So this was the article with opening day looming. Season predictions are starting to come out. MLB.com's has a heavy dose of optimism for the White Sox in 2023. Will Leach predicts that the White Sox will win 90 games in the American League Central. He predicts a 2-game margin over the Cleveland Guardians, winners, of course, of the 2021 AL Central title. So for Will Leach, it goes White Sox, Guardians, then Twins at 86 wins, Kansas City Royals 67, and Detroit Tigers 65 in the cellar. Will Leach said, "This is the 4th consecutive year I've picked the White Sox to win the division. And to be fair, they actually did that once in 2021. I'm still a believer with a new manager and better health. In the end, I don't trust the Guardians to make the big move they probably need to take advantage of this division. As usual, though, you can pick any of those top 3 teams. Your guess is as good as anyone's." Leach also poses 2 key questions for each division, for each team in the division. First, he asks what the vibe is like in the clubhouse post Tony La Russa. Second, will everyone be healthy at the same time? So both of those questions are what we've been trying to figure out all off season. I think the vibes have been better, at least if you read into all of the articles and quotes, everything that everybody's been saying. Of course, everything is roses in spring training, but if you read between the lines, there's been a couple players, some veterans that have come out and say, wow, this is different. I haven't had a spring training quite like this. And then those that were around last year have compared and said, you know what? It's a little looser environment. I'm liking the chemistry that we're building. Pedro Grifol and the coaching staff are running things the right way. They asked for our input. It just seems like the vibes are indeed good. Will that sustain itself, through some tough April and May? those months are tough weather-wise, and coming back from Arizona, guys are still trying to get their legs. Those are important games. They really are. As Grifol has said, you're not going to win it in April, May, but you could lose it. So hopefully those vibes, carry all the way through, when the Sox hit some problematic stretches, because that's going to happen. Will everyone stay healthy at the same time? We're going to get to that next question in a moment. That's what everybody's talking about right now. After the Moncada and Jimenez latest situation, can everybody stay healthy? I had an opportunity to talk with the hosts from Locked On Guardians. They just dropped that episode yesterday. So if you have the stomach to go in and check out Locked On Guardians, I was featured in the latest episode of theirs talking about the Chicago White Sox and how they match up with the Guardians. And look, I think our pitching can go against anybody, especially our top three in the AL Central. Can we play somewhat like the Guardians? Can we take extra bases? Can we not beat ourselves? The Guardians, they didn't hit for power, yet they were able, to take care of business when it mattered. They played as a team. They were managed well, that's for sure. And they did the little things right. That's what the Sox need to do. I think they will return to power, but the Sox need to be fundamentally sound. And of course they need to be healthy. And I told these two guys from Locked On Guardians, I said, look, if Eloy Jimenez and Luis Robert can play 140 games, I know there's some folks laughing right now saying 140 games. I get it. We haven't seen anything close to that. But if they can, watch out. I mean, who is gonna beat this team? And then you throw in Moncada and a healthy Yasmani Grandal. So obviously the health is indeed critical for this White Sox team. We're all waiting for it. Now, 90 wins, I've been saying that for a while. 90 wins, I think that's doable. Somewhere in the 88 to 92 range. If that's, I know that's crazy because there are other folks predicting far less. And I know it seems foolish to rely on the health piece, but I like our pitching. I like the potential in our lineup. I like that we've got two corner outfielders that actually can play the outfield. I like Jimenez at DH. I'm a little shaky on our bullpen. I'm curious to see how that's going to pan out. I think we're going to rely on them, but that's probably one of my big question marks. And then where are these utility guys? Who are they going to be? Is Hanser Alberto going to be able to beat out Lurie Garcia? Is Billy Hamilton going to be on the team? Those little fringy type of moves can matter a lot in close ball games. So, hey, 90 wins, I think, is absolutely doable. We'll probably address this a little bit closer to opening day next week. Now, speaking of injuries, John, appreciate the comment and really question. John said, are these injuries just a fluke, or is it time to panic once again? And of course, Eloy Jimenez had that cramp in his leg, and then Moncada with the rib issue from the World Baseball Classic game. I think some refreshing news on Eloy Jimenez. According to Scott Merkin, Eloy Jimenez is fine, did his running on Tuesday morning, scheduled to play in one of the split squad games on Wednesday. And James Fegan tweeted, Grifol said Eloy Jimenez cramped up while sitting on the bench on Monday, not after running out a grounder. He said Jimenez has already ran and worked on Tuesday without issue, was scheduled to be off against the Brewers ahead of time, but will play on Wednesday. So, look, I'm not abandoning all hope here, but I understand that the injury bug biting Moncada, Jimenez, Vaughn has created a lot of understandable unrest amongst fans. I'm trying to stay positive, but you got to fan however way you want to. That is completely up to you. I just can't go doom and gloom right now, okay? I'm hoping, maybe again foolishly, that it's just bruised ribs for Moncada and just a cramp for Jimenez for now. There were some roster moves a couple days ago. Actually, after the game against the Diamondbacks on Monday, White Sox made the following roster moves. Optioned right-hand pitchers AJ Alexy and Frank German to AAA Charlotte. Reassigned right-hand pitchers Declan Cronin, Lane Ramsey and Jesse Schultens, catcher Adam Hackenberg, infielder Moises Castillo, and outfielder Victor Reyes. With the moves, the White Sox have 42 players remaining in camp, 21 pitchers, 3 catchers, 11 infielders, and 7 outfielders. White Sox held on to beat the Brewers on Tuesday. Lucas Giolito turned in another solid performance in one of his last spring training starts. More on that in a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The tournament is heating up, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on anything from the money line to point scores and threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. White Sox in action Tuesday afternoon, beating the Milwaukee Brewers 6-5. Lucas Giolito was on the mound. Giolito's last outing was a B game last Thursday. And after his scheduled start last Wednesday against the Giants was rained out, Giolito was slotted into a B game against a Dodgers team on the Camelback Ranch backfields last Thursday. He worked 4 scoreless innings, striking out 6. Now, there was no pitch clock on the backfields, but Giolito said, "I wasn't counting in my head, but I thought, don't be walking around the mound. Don't be doing that stuff that we used to be able to do." Giolito said, "I was just trying to keep a good pace with it." Giolito didn't walk a batter and allowed 3 hits on 63 pitches, primarily a fastball, changeup pitcher. He liked how his slider worked, especially down into lefties. He also made an adjustment partway through the outing, elevating his fastball more where it was most effective. That was from Daryl Van Scoven in the Chicago Sun-Times. Fast forward to what happened Tuesday afternoon with Giolito on the bump. He went 4 1/3 innings pitched. 1 hit, 2 earned runs, a couple of walks, 6 strikeouts, and that hit a home run second inning. So another one of those early game home runs, but that was it for Giolito. His ERA now sits at 3.86 in spring training. I like what Giolito said. I think he's one of the guys that he might like the pitch clock, but I think it's going to affect him the most. Maybe you can factor in Michael Kopech, but I think Giolito is one of those guys that, he's in his head. He's thinking. And, this has been hopefully a great opportunity to use it like a laboratory this spring to get used to that pitch clock, because it's happening. And he may be slotted in that third spot. We'll talk a little bit more about starting rotation later in the episode, but like what he said, like what he did on Tuesday, is he only has a few more starts now before the season gets going. Sox went with Diekman, Kelly, Middleton, Stivers, and Morin. Stivers gave up 3 runs, but 0 runs were earned. White Sox committed 2 errors in the game. Sox offense, 6 runs, 8 hits. Jake Berger had a double. Romy Gonzalez, Gavin Sheets, and Adam Hazley hit home runs. Gonzalez is starting to flex the power finally. Adam Hazley keeps swinging the bat. Man, he's hitting over 450 in spring training. Sox were 2 for 4 with runners in scoring position. Grifol will definitely have to find opportunities for Gavin Sheets' bat. He's got a sweet lefty swing. He really does. And we're going to need that power, especially with the shift being, banned. I think he's going to just be able to hit for pretty decent average too. I would like to see the White Sox maintain a consistent lineup, unlike what happened last year. Boy, it felt like we had 2 straight months with different lineups. I get it. There was some injuries, but there were moments where the same consistent lineup could have been rolled out for a few games, and that didn't happen. I'd like to see Pedro Grifol and his coaching staff go with the lineup and kind of stick with it, even if there are some struggling players. But Sheets is going to have to find his moments, whether that's pinch hit or some spot starts at DH, first base, or even right field. Hanser Alberto did not get in the game on Tuesday, and we haven't seen Lurie Garcia in a while, but that will change. Utility man, super utility man, the legend, Lurie Garcia, expected to play Wednesday after being sidelined with a sore left hand. Garcia has not appeared in a game since March 14th. So far this spring in 11 games, Garcia has had 25 at-bats, 5 hits, 1 home run in there, 6 strikeouts, slashing 200, 259, 400 with an OPS of 659. Interesting article, kind of a blurb actually by Van Scoven in the Sun-Times recently about just defending the steal. Pedro Grifol emphasized holding runners and defending the steal since day one of camp and was not pleased with aggressive Diamondbacks stealing 3 bases in 4 attempts on Monday. We're addressing it, Grifol said. We're trying to gain 90 feet on the offense and limit 90 feet on the defensive side. 3 of the bases were stolen with Yasmani Grandal catching. No surprise there. Prospect Adam Hackenberg threw out a runner. Grifol said Grandal and Seby Zavala are throwing the ball really well, maybe just not quick enough. Much of it falls on the pitchers holding runners. That makes sense. I get that. We have to field the position. We have to control the running game. Grifol said, that's just the way it is. We have to do those things if we want to be successful. Again, winning on the margins. Those were one of those things that, if you could throw out a runner every now and then, or at least limit your base runners, the opposition from trying it. And I know this year it's going to be a whole different ball game with these new rule changes. And I think the first few months or so, you're just not going to know exactly maybe what teams are necessarily doing against you, where your weaknesses are, and maybe where your strengths are. That's going to be something hopefully that the Sox figured out early on, but that has always been an issue, throwing out base runners. So happy to see Grifol and the coaching staff all over that. Oscar Colas has been one of the biggest surprises this spring, and Andrew Vaughn has the potential to be a breakout star in 2023. More on that in a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Baseball GM. Hey, I'm really excited about our new partner and sponsor of today's episode, the mobile game Ultimate Baseball GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an MLB GM and managing your professional baseball franchise? Well, your dream could come true, and this game is definitely for you. Manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the season, and lead your team to glory. You're responsible for hiring the right coaches and staff, scouting and drafting players, navigating your franchise through free agency and all the ups and downs of a season. All this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Baseball GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want, when you want to. Now is your chance to prove that you can be more competent than our Rick Hahn. No guarantee that you'll have as much job security, of course, but you'll have a seat at the table, and that's always fun. Hopefully you set the market and be proactive instead of reactive. Locked On White Sox listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On in the game store. So make sure you check it out. To download the game, just visit probaseballgm.com. Scan the code or look it up in the app stores. That's probaseballgm.com. Ultimate Baseball GM. Start your dynasty today. Oscar Colas is doing absolutely everything. I mean, I don't know what else, what other boxes have yet to be checked. He's going to be your starting right fielder in Houston. If he's not, it is an absolute shame. Scott Merkin was able to choose one player on the White Sox that has made a big impression for a WhiteSox.com article. And of course, Oscar Colas was the choice. Merkin wrote, Colas is the answer to many questions involving the White Sox during spring training because the rookie might be an important component to their lineup and defense. Chicago's number 2 prospect figured to have the edge in right field entering Pedro Grifol's first camp as manager, although nobody has said it on record, nor will do so until the opening day lineups are officially announced. But Colas has earned his spot with a strong work ethic in Arizona, along with solid production overall, has the left-handed power bat and a right-handed heavy lineup. Is that ideal? No, but he has the willingness to learn from his mistakes and improve on such things as hitting the cutoff man and secondary leads. Colas doesn't need to be a featured player in this veteran lineup, but could end up being a significant producer. Yes, definitely the cutoff man just throws into second too, can use some work. But again, he's been more than serviceable, I think, in right field this spring. Again, I feel like he's done it all, and he has earned that right field starting spot. Keith Law from The Athletic had an article recently, 10 candidates in all of baseball to have a breakout season in 2023. And our guy, Andrew Vaughn, was one of the 10 that Keith Law mentioned. This is what Law wrote. I'm betting that getting Vaughn out of left field and returning to his natural position, first base, will help him become the hitter the White Sox thought they were getting when they drafted him 3rd overall in 2019. Vaughn was an extremely patient hitter who hit for average with some power in college, but in the majors, he's been much less disciplined while making harder contact. He did show significant adjustments from 2021 to 2022, making better swing decisions and picking up pitch types better. 2 things alone should help him go from a replacement level player last year to one who's at least 2 wins above it this year, moving out of left field and getting better results on balls in play against lefties, against whom he really was unlucky last year. He rarely strikes out with a platoon at an advantage, and 32% of the balls he hit into play against lefties were at 100 miles per hour exit velocities or harder, but he had just 6 extra base hits and a .377 slugging percentage against southpaws. I think there's more improvement overall coming, but those 2 areas are low-hanging fruit for Vaughn and Chicago. My question, again, he's got to be healthy. Worried about this lingering back situation. I hope it is just simply some aches and pains, but the fact that it's been happening before, there is a worry there for me. Can Andrew Vaughn catch people off guard? Meaning, are they going to be a little worried about a healthy Robert, Jimenez, Grandal, Moncada, TA in the lineup? Again, I'm assuming, okay? I'm just going to assume that those guys are healthy come opening day and beyond. And you've got an opposing pitcher in those meetings. They're talking about these guys. What are we going to do with Tim Anderson? What are we going to do with Benintendi? What are we going to do with Robert, Jimenez, Grandal, Moncada? Oh, yeah, and then there's Andrew Vaughn, okay? I'm just wondering if he could potentially play sleeper and catch some folks off guard and do some serious damage. I like him in the lower part of the lineup, but in the future, I mean, he very well could be a 3 or 4 hitter. So we'll see where he ends up. He's been all over the place in spring training, just hoping he gets healthy. There was some praise for Michael Kopech recently from Ethan Katz. I think Michael Kopech is the X factor in the rotation. I told that to the Lockdown Guardians hosts. Look, if Michael Kopech can give us 175 innings, 30-plus starts, watch out, man. And that takes a lot of pressure after some of these other guys in the starting rotation. It helps out the bullpen a ton. This is what Katz had to say. It's the consistency with everything, with all his stuff. He's throwing a curveball, he's landing it. He's throwing a slider, he's landing it. He's throwing a changeup, he's landing it. Doing that along with also maintaining his pitch shapes. So it's not the fluctuation of one great one, then losing it. It's all continuously in flow every single time he's throwing these pitches and filling up the zone every single time. That's what's been a lot different. This is the best I've seen Kopech, said catcher Seby Zavala. He's calm, collected. He is processing things a lot better than he has in the past. Last year was his first year in the starting rotation through a full season, and I think that learning experience was good, and he's carrying it over real well into the season. I like what I'm hearing there. How about Dylan Cease for opening day? It sure seems like a foregone conclusion. There's been no official announcement regarding the White Sox opening day starter on March 30th in Houston. However, Dylan Cease can't openly acknowledge the pitching schedule has been lined up for him to be the opening day starter less than 2 weeks from now in Houston. But he is far enough along to reflect on all of his troubles as spring training noise. As I get more high intensity reps, the velocity will probably naturally climb. But if I have to pitch at 95 miles per hour, then I'll pitch at 95. If I have to pitch at 98, I'll pitch at 98. C said the big thing in spring is locking in the strike zone. And then as you get a little sharper, now it's like, all right, where do I start my slider to get it to be a strike or a ball if you don't want them to hit it? I'm very pleased with where I'm at, C said. It's one of those things where it's not that funny in the moment, but I found that anytime you have something like that happen and you come out and have success, it just further develops confidence because it's like I can dig myself out of something like that, or I can come back from something like that. I think it was obviously not ideal, but I'm at a good spot. So we can laugh about it. Cease, that was from James Fegan in The Athletic, and Cease referencing that horrible Royals outing a few weeks ago. And I think that's a great point by Cease. You know, again, if we're treating spring training like this laboratory, what happens if I get in trouble? You know, I'm going to get in trouble during the regular season. There are going to be games when I don't have my A stuff or even my B stuff, but I'm going to have to compete. So what do? You know, and to have those feelings in spring and to be able to get back to it or bounce back from it after an ugly inning or after a couple ugly innings and hang in there and still be able to compete, there is some confidence building there. So I thought that was an interesting quote by Cease. I've got it: Dylan Cease, Lance Lynn, Lucas Giolito, Clevenger, and Kopech right now. That's the rotation once opening day hits. However, I think Kopech will eventually be moved to the fourth. This all could change by next week, but that's what I'm looking at right now. Folks, thank you so very much for making this podcast part of your daily routine. You can find the Locked On White Sox podcast absolutely everywhere you find your podcast. We're on Twitter at Locked On Sox. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTB. Hey, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make your second listen now of the Locked On Fantasy Baseball. Win your league by listening to Matt and Dom every day as they bring you the best fantasy draft strategies. Find Locked On Fantasy Baseball wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hey, on the next episode, I'll continue to bring you the latest happenings from Glendale, Arizona, as the White Sox inch closer to opening day. Appreciate you making time for the Locked On White Sox podcast. I'm Nick Morawski. Until next time, go Sox.